Welcome to the Research Culture Uncovered podcast, where in every episode we explore what is research culture and what should it be. You'll hear thoughts and opinions from a range of contributors to help you change research culture into what you want it to be.
Welcome to the Research Culture Uncovered podcast. My name is Ged Hall and I'm an academic development consultant at the University of Leeds, where I specialise in research impact. This particular episode is about impact coaching and my take on how to do it. The episode will join the Research Impact playlist. The link for that playlist and all of our other playlists are in the show notes. Now, coaching isn't new and has been around in many forms for years, things like life coaching, executive coaching, etc. But focusing coaching on the area of research impact is probably quite new, mainly because the focus on research impact has really only grown over the last 15 years or so. Also, the use of coaching in higher education, certainly within the UK, probably doesn't go back much longer than that. Now, I've been offering impact coaching at the University of Leeds since I started this role back in August 2011. I did it to avoid going down the more usual route of focus groups or surveys to understand what the research community needed from any research impact training. Going this way offered me a more ethnographic approach to understanding those needs because I was working with researchers for a number of months or even longer. These experiences and the researchers I worked with really have informed my approach to research impact development programs ever since. In the rest of the episode, I want to describe where coaching sits in the wider research impact development offering at the University of Leeds. Then I'm going to describe how I approach coaching, what it hopefully looks like from the researcher's perspective, and how we work as a team of coaches for any topic or situation at Leeds to guide our own development. Finally, I thought I would then leave you with a few questions to consider if you wanted to offer a similar service. At Leeds, there is quite a range of provision that is related to research impact. These range from short information sessions and online resources through to longitudinal programs lasting up to a year. All the provision may focus on specific aspects of research impact, such as business engagement, policy engagement, public engagement, or innovation, and are offered by teams with those specialisms. I tend to focus on generalized impact development, and this can mean I work with anyone, no matter what pathways and/or stakeholders they are thinking about. However, we've all recently collaborated to agree a framework for categorizing this provision. It comes in 3 stages. The first we've called curiosity. This is for people new to research impact or the specific pathway or stakeholder. The second is about creating. This is for researchers who want to apply that foundational knowledge and actually try to create impact. And the final stage is catalyzing. This is for researchers who are looking to really grow their research impact in reach and significance, and potentially may also want to help their colleagues to start creating impact, maybe in a more formal role like a director of impact in a school. Now, I offer a program called Building Impact Momentum at the creating level. I'm not going to go into that because Mark Reed did interview me about that on his podcast, and I have also talked about it on a webinar hosted by Epigeum. I've put both of those links in the show notes. However, if you do want to know more about this program than is covered in those two formats, then please get in touch with me. I'm really happy to have a chat and share the resources with anybody who wants them. The coaching covers the boundary from creating and on into catalyzing. Over the last 13 years, I've worked with individuals and groups. The groups can be teams from large funded projects or from cognate projects who have similar interests and impact goals. Up to now, they've usually been around 3 to 8 people, but I've just started discussions with a much larger group funded by the Biotechnology and Biological Sciences Research Council, or BBSRC, through their strategic longer and larger grants scheme about how this could work for them. They work at 3 different institutions, including Leeds. But most of the coaching I do is with individuals. So what does it look like for them? It starts with an initial meeting, which is about getting to know each other and our different backgrounds and how it will work. Essentially, this meeting is to determine if we can work together successfully and is a really common first step in agreeing any coaching or even mentoring relationship. In fact, when I received some coaching a couple of years ago through the university and using an external coach, they took me through exactly that same process. One of the common questions that's asked in this meeting is how tightly does the coaching have to be linked to research impact? Now, I'm pretty flexible on this because if there are other things going on that prevents the researcher from engaging with impact, then working on that issue to help them to prioritize impact is, for me, within scope. Personally, I also think that sometimes in research adjacent or professional support roles, we too often signpost the academic to someone else when really we could probably help them ourselves and do enough to help them get around that issue and solve the problem. The rest of the experience often tends to follow the curriculum of building impact momentum. And really, this is no surprise because that curriculum was created through those coaching engagements in my first couple of years at Leeds that I mentioned. There is often a lot of work around the individual's values and how those influence which types of impact they may want to prioritize, especially when a piece of research could have numerous potential impacts. We'll then likely spend time trying to refine that potential impact into a robust and specific impact goal or goals. This then often leads onto stakeholders and truly respecting their agency in the whole impact process because, let's face it, it really is their impact, not ours. This can involve many things. How will I get that authentic voice into the research and the impact or goals? What sort of co-productive practices are right for them and for me? What resources do they have or not have that will enable or hinder their engagement? How might I work with them to leverage those resources and mine to reduce those barriers to engagement? How do I make those initial approaches to increase the likelihood of success? And how do I deal with unsuccessful approaches? As relationships with stakeholders are growing, there are then other questions around maintaining those relationships and keeping them balanced in terms of benefits. This then opens up questions around planning for impact as well as workload. This tends to be from a real increase in the amount of incoming requests that might happen from new stakeholders. So there's often a phase of looking at the nearer and longer term goals of the researcher in terms of both their research and impact, and helping them to work out if these new approaches align with those goals and their underpinning values. Of course, evaluation is never far from the discussion. We'd spend a lot of time talking about how to demonstrate impact. It's always cropping up. And really going beyond what data, tools, and methods exist, the main angle for this discussion is actually how to make it manageable so that it doesn't become another piece of research that needs to be done. There can also be the discussion of rigor and reliability. This often crops up in the science and engineering disciplines, where there can often be a drive for very high levels of certainty for research conclusions. This can mean that lower levels of certainty, which are definitely much more likely with impact claims, feel a bit like finger waving and lacking in credibility. But we can't ever definitively say that there is cast iron causation in complex systems. So really, we can't expect to attain that proof with research impact. So how does it feel for me as a coach and the researchers are receiving the coaching? For me, it's always about the relationship and there being mutual benefit. Am I bringing value to them? And am I getting better at coaching as a result? The benefit for me is often realizing by being confronted with new research areas with new potential routes to impact, which broadens and deepens my experience of that very broad topic. For them, the benefit is often as simple as someone who believes in them is working with them to make their research lives, and more specifically their research impact lives, less about assessment. things like the large-scale research excellence framework and the smaller things like promotions, grant applications, etc. And therefore, I hope it will make them feel less lonely. I say lonely because every single researcher is judged by their peers in the system, usually as an individual and not as a team. I hope they feel that through this relationship that I'm sharing that burden with them. In the more general realm of coaching, there is often a starting point that the coach shouldn't be an expert. This tends to hold with life coaching or executive coaching, but in the realm of higher education, expertise is our currency. It is almost the fundamental block that we build all of our assessments on. But is there really an expert in research impact? In a blog I wrote with Dr. Tamika Hayden from the Research Impact Academy in Australia, our answer to that was no. This is because the topic is so vast and because there are so many different types of impact that occur in many different complex systems. Our conclusion was that research impact expertise was a property of a group, and that group includes the stakeholders that we want to work with. So what does that mean in terms of being a research impact coach? It essentially means that we need to collaborate with the researcher or group of researchers, and we may need to extend this into the stakeholder communities they want to work with to help facilitate the building of that expertise through action and reflection on that action. That, for me, is the basic definition of a coach of any type. Last year, Ruth Winden, another of our podcast hosts, set up a coaching discussion group, and we have been collectively reading and discussing a book called Self as Coach, Self as Leader by Pamela McLean. I'll put a link to that in the show notes. It's been fascinating to use the book to surface all of our practice and reflecting on that. And for me personally, I really rate the book. So thanks, Ruth, for suggesting it. Some of my reflections from the book and those discussions have really focused on the trust that needs to be part of the coaching setup, so that at times you can challenge and at other times know that a different approach would work best. In the realm of research impact, that trust means that I need to clear out all of the institutional pressures to generate more impact. This relationship is just between me and those researchers. It is their priorities that drive this relationship and not the institutional strategy or external pressures. Of course, if they bring those angles into the discussion, then I can help them to get to the outcome they want. The final area I wanted to cover before wrapping up this episode is capacity. I'm raising this because it nearly always gets asked. Over the years I've been offering this service, it's not yet been an issue. Most coaches have a personal limit they are comfortable with. A quick Google search in preparing for this episode suggested around 10 to 15 coaching relationships at any one time. Over the years, I've personally maxed out at about 10, and this has been down to demand, not my capacity. I could probably go up to the 15 mark if that was necessary. Now, if that isn't enough for your goals at your institution, then you may have to think of a different way to go. But remember that my coaching is offered alongside other development opportunities that reach bigger numbers. Also at Leeds, there are now impact manager roles within nearly all of the 7 faculties, and there are even some at school level. Some of the people in these roles, in fact nearly all of them, operate in more of a consultancy style, but this is just another flavour of being a trusted provider of an external view on a problem. And again, this really helps with the capacity issue. So if you want to start delivering an impact coaching service, here are the things I think you need to consider. What do you need to overcome any imposter syndrome thoughts that you may have about this? This could be a coaching qualification or other routes to developing your coaching practice and skills. It could also be thinking about how broad and deep your current experience of impact is. Will it be enough to be able to add value to anyone who may ask for the service? The next point is, how might you advertise and evaluate the service? Personally, I advertise with all the other research impact development provision that I mentioned being part of our framework. And it also gets pushed on its own roughly quarterly. I also look to agree what is success for each relationship. If I understand that, then I can have my own assessment of how close we are getting. And we can also discuss this as part of each meeting that we have. I certainly don't use evaluation forms here. From my mind, they just get in the way. Now, what structure and format might you use? You may want to think of time, number of meetings. Again, I don't actually do this. I just say, I will be with you as long as you need me. This is, of course, not just an individual decision, but one that is discussed with them and agreed as the relationship progresses. But I use this format because I want them to feel that it is all about them and their needs. The next question to ask yourself is, how hands-on will you be in the impact plans you develop with those you coach? In my setup, I come back to what you need statement. If they need it, then I get very hands-on. I also think that works well for me, and it's what brings me the benefits of the chance to experience those plans in action and learn from them. So it really does broaden and deepen my experiences as an impact professional. The final question is, how will you grow as a coach? The coaching discussion group I mentioned previously has been fantastic in pushing my development. This isn't just about developing either. In therapeutic settings, e.g. counselling, counsellors have supervision sessions to decompress, etc. And in our coaching discussion group, we have found that we need something similar, and the group has helped to provide that. It's really been a chance to reflect in a very safe space. In addition, I've also been lucky enough to work with Dr. Jackie Reynolds from Staffordshire University in delivering a series of webinars on impact coaching. Hearing about the approaches used by her and other speakers has been really helpful in reflecting on my own practice. The links to the recordings from the 2 webinars from last year are in the show notes, as is the registration link for the next one in the series that Jack is organising on the 23rd of May. Also, if this episode has piqued your interest in coaching, you may want to listen to my colleague Tony Bromley's discussion with Dr. Tanvir Ahmed from Coventry University on his use of coaching more widely in research and development. I've put the link for that in the show notes too. Finally, if you do decide to do some impact coaching, or indeed if you already are, I'd really love to hear from you. You can either post your thoughts on our LinkedIn announcement for the episode, or just get in touch with me via email. Thanks for listening and enjoy your coaching.
Thanks for listening to the Research Culture Uncovered podcast. Please subscribe so you never miss out on our brand new episodes. And if you're enjoying the discussions, give us some love by dropping a 5-star rating and written review, as it helps other research culturists find us. And please share with a friend and show them how to subscribe. Thanks for listening, and here's to you and your research culture.